The gardens. We know that it's the next subfloor coming to Doors, and it will be added in the next update, so I did some digging and found everything we know about the subfloor. So from the entities to the main boss, here's everything coming to the gardens. Let's start with the entities. So far there has been a lot of leaks of entities that will be in the gardens, and the most interesting entity is called the Groundskeeper, which is another name for a person who tends gardens. From the way he looks, and the fact that he is the only leaked humanoid entity for the gardens, he will probably act similar to Seek and will chase us around throughout the garden subfloor. However, unlike Seek, the Groundskeeper will be much slower and will give us time to move through the gardens. This is because of the snares that we know will be in the gardens, which from my guess we will have to avoid while being chased down by him. But past this, from the fact that he's a Groundskeeper, however, I believe that he will also be cultivating other entities in the subfloor as well. From my best guess, the entity that he will be cultivating will be this leaked entity known as Abraham. Now I say this because Abraham has a very similar texture and design to the figure, which although sounds weird because we would be in a garden, makes sense. Think about it. The figure would have had to come from somewhere, and the figure in floor 2 was revealed to have his spotlight solely to eat the gloom bats so he could survive, which implies that he originated and evolved from floor 2, or maybe from a place connected to floor 2, which in this case would be the gardens. Now you might be asking, where would Abraham come from? Well, I think that he would come from the flesh puddles that we've seen throughout Doors. This would not only explain why we see them, but also why the figure is made out of flesh and bones, but seemingly has no blood. And from this, you might be asking why we don't see Abrahams near the other flesh piles we see in Doors. Well, the simple answer is that the Abrahams would be grown by the Groundskeeper in the garden subfloor. This, to me at least, makes much more sense to why we would see a garden subfloor in a mine that has weird, fleshy creatures coming from it, and would also explain many plot holes in Doors, like where the figure originally comes from. From my guess, Abraham will act similar to the figure in the sense that he can't see, but because he is less developed, his vibration sensing abilities won't be as good, which will be compensated with multiple Abrahams, which would fit into the idea that the Groundskeeper cultivated them. However, the Groundskeeper won't just be cultivating Abrahams, because we know from the hints given to us by the secret courtyard room and the checkpoint rooms in the mines that a new vine entity will be coming in the gardens. This vine entity is what makes up the snare spikes, and is the same vines that we see cover the basement door in the courtyard and the chests in the mines, which both imply that the vines will be hostile toward us and will be stopping us from getting to the next doors in the subfloor. From my guess, the vine entity will be blocking certain parts of the subfloor that we will have to go to, and because we will be where the vines originated from, they will actively be moving and lashing out at us, similar to the Seek hands in floor 1. However, from my guess, the vines will be easily countered by the shears we see in the courtyard and rarely in chests. Past cutting down the vines, however, these shears will also be used to disarm another leaked entity, which is literally just a Venus flytrap. From my guess, the Venus flytrap will just hold loot in its mouth, and we will have to cut it off of the vines to get the loot. If we don't cut it off and try to grab it, however, the flytrap will shut on us, and although we will get the loot, we will take damage. This would also give us the option to get our shears back if they broke, which would keep the gardens not completely impossible. But that's it for the leaked entities, so let's get into what the floor will actually look like from what we know so far. I think that the gardens won't be like the back doors or the rooms, because it seems to actually be connected to the mines and not in a separate dimension like the other subfloors. I also think that the gardens will have 50 doors that will have their own counter similar to the rooms. But because we can get multiple skeleton keys in Doors, from my best guess, the gardens will also be accessed by a skeleton key too, and the door to the gardens will be placed in one of the treasure rooms we see in floor 2 or Jeff's shop. The actual gardens, however, will most likely have a similar effect to the courtyard in floor 1 in the sense that there will be plants and specifically vines everywhere, which will block our path multiple times. From my best guess, the entities will all have their specific sections in the gardens, with the Groundskeeper acting similar to Seek in the sense that we will be chased by him in earlier doors, and the Abrahams being similar to the figure in the sense that there will just be one big dedicated room for them at the end of the floor. But that's really all that we know for the environment, so from all of this we can conclude exactly what the gardens will be like. When we enter the gardens, we will be greeted with large courtyards filled with greenery and vines that we will have to cut our way through until we get to door 10, where we will be chased down by the Groundskeeper, which from my guess will be similar to the Seek chase except slightly slower, and will have curious light guiding us instead of guiding light because of the fact that we would be in a subfloor. We will have to avoid snares and vines trying to grab us and hold us still so the Groundskeeper can get us. This chase scene would end at somewhere between door 25 to 40, and we will be met with a similar area to the greenhouse we see in the hotel with the PNGs constantly rushing us. However, when we get to door 50, we will be met with the Abrahams, who we will have to avoid while doing some kind of puzzle that has to do with the Venus flytraps and curious light hinting at where we need to go. After we escape the gardens from my guess, we will be rewarded with a bunch of vines chests and maybe a bottle of starlight. But what do you guys think? Make sure to like and subscribe.